This is a Molten Metal moment with the Roadie. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to the Molten Metal Show a member of Iron Maiden from 1977, Terry Wapram.
I was spotted playing the marquee with a band called Booker and invited to go into Maiden at that point. And at that point, Dave Murray and Bob Sawyer were the current guitarists, but they'd both been sacked in exactly the same moment, virtually. So I went in as a single guitarist. It was interesting, but they'd already started to build up the kind of double guitar thing, and I wasn't really sure where they were going to go with it. And initially, Steve and I played gigs with just him and I playing, and him trying to sort of vaguely duplicate some of the dual guitar parts, and then kind of jump back on the deeper end of the bass. And after a while, that became clear they were losing something. They hadn't got quite the identity, obviously they have now, but they'd already explored the two guitar thing quite successfully. So it proved to be awkward. So at that point, Tony Moore was brought in because Dennis Wilcock at the time was looking more to the American bands such as Foreigner and some of the other people, and he thought that might be a good way to go, like with a good strong guitar, but with keyboards instead of two guitars, kind of sharing the work.
What was the sort of sounds you were playing with them?
Well, I was basically playing all of the first two albums virtually. There was a few from the second album that probably weren't developed then, but definitely all of the first album and a good chunk of the second album. And it was in the sort of developing stages. I mean, I was about 3, 4 years, I think probably 3 years older than Steve. So I felt I had a slightly more rounded approach. I mean, I later on became to appreciate that his absolute determination and sticking to kind of his plan was the correct way to go. I was one of the sort of people, we'd try something for a year, and if that wasn't working, we kind of dart off in another direction. But I mean, he stuck to his guns the whole way through till it eventually, worked for him very, very well. Dennis always done a lot with Phantom of the Opera, but I was actually the original guitarist to have ever played Phantom of the Opera. Steve Harris brought the song in when I was sitting around his grandmother's where we used to rehearse, and said, "What do you think of this?" And I thought, God almighty, this is such a step forward,
It was one of my favourite songs from that early period. That's great to be able to hear from one of the guys that originated it.
Well, like I say, in them days, you hear things, you do things, you're all playing along. It kind of builds itself up as it goes along, But I thought, what a great song that was. I spent a long time working on stuff with them, and obviously there was a few lineup changes because drummers were changing, different things were going on. It was more of an experimental period. I mean, I feel, looking at it later on, it actually did them some good because they took some good from what we all did together, and then they got completely focused that really the two guitar deal was where it was at. And, as later on they have used keyboards. Like the guy's not even really a full member of the band, is he? He's just off to the side.
You were probably part of the catalyst that began to start the direction that they ended up going in.
Yeah, I think particularly Dennis, because he worked, he played many gigs with Bob Sawyer and Dave Murray, and obviously theatrics. As I say, I came in at a later stage. I think all in all, certain people say Thunderstick was with them longer, and he would back me up on this because we were friends. I was there before he came, working out all this stuff because it was Ronnie Rebel at first, and then Ronnie Rebel got sacked as well, and they got out at the same time for keyboards and a drummer. It was a very interesting time because you really couldn't tell they were going to reach this level. They were a very, very popular kind of pub and club band, but obviously, they're probably the biggest people in the world now.
The Molten Metal moment with the Roadie.